Hello everybody, hello, no aloha here. We're in moonlit New Orleans, Louisiana, and we're going to take a couple of investigators through the print-on-demand scenario, Curse of the Rougarou, that was released a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, we're going to play with Agnes and Skids. I've grabbed this piece of artwork from the internet. I think it's actually an actual print from, I believe the year was 1885. I'm not familiar with New Orleans myself, but I trust that this is what New Orleans looks like. Let's jump to the table. So with these single chapters that Fantasy Flight are putting out, you can either insert them into one of your campaigns in between chapters, and typically the way they're doing this is you will then pay an experience point cost with a view to gaining some nice cards that you can then take back into the main campaign. I'm not going to do that, we're going to do a standalone game. The standalone variant rules are on page 19, I think, of the rules reference. What we're going to do is, you would take any old campaign, the only one that we have available to us right now is Knight of the Zealot. So we're going to imagine we started a Knight of the Zealot campaign with Agnes and Skids, and I think I am going to play it as if we are inserting it between chapters 1 and 2. So the contrivance behind the setup is that Skids and Agnes met at Skids' house, and we are going to take Resolution 1 from the gathering. Skids decided to burn down his house. Lita will be in his deck, and he takes 1 mental trauma, which you can see I've already applied here. I've written it down in the little thing. 1 mental trauma from having the house burned down, and Lita Chandler added to deck. And then we're going to jump into Curse of the Rougarou. Skids and Agnes, for better or worse, just decided to leave Arkham to its fate. And rather than head off into the streets of Arkham to hunt down the cultists, Agnes had a hot tip that something was going down in New Orleans, and they decided to jump on the nearest train and just bugger off to Louisiana. So we're going to have Agnes as the lead investigator for this scenario, having had Skids as the lead investigator in our imaginary playthrough of Chapter 1. So that is the setup. For a standalone scenario, you would build your deck. You kind of just have free roam over whatever you want to add with certain maximum limitations. And you can just add a bunch of the higher level cards into your deck that you want to bring into the standalone scenario, and then you have to pay a weakness cost, depending on how heavy you go into these higher level cards. If you build a deck with 0 to, is it 9 or 10? 0 to 9 experience points worth of cards, you do not alter your deck at all, but then for every 10 experience points above 9, you add a basic weakness. I have built 2 decks, Skids' and Agnes's, and they have 19 points worth of higher level cards in there. Because I'm at that second tier, that means that we will be starting the game with 2 basic weaknesses in each deck rather than 1. Let's take a look at the decks that we have built. Now, the majority, the lion's share of my gameplay over the past 2-3 weeks has been with Roland and Wendy, both during the recordings that we were doing and kind of in my kitchen as well when I'm playing with my physical version. I am not very, very experienced at all with either of the other 3, any of the other 3 investigators. So there's a lot of just gut feeling going on to the construction of these decks. If there are any Skids experts out there, any Agnes fanatics, you may have doubts or your eyes may go wide in shock at some of the choices I made. I don't know. We'll just see how my gut has done. So here we have Lita that's just added as part of the resolution of the gathering. And then for our assets, what have I put in Skids? A single copy of Burglary. Why a single copy? I don't know what to expect. I haven't played Curse of the Rougarou yet. I'm going in completely blind. I don't know what kind of shroud values are going to be on the locations. I don't know how time dependent it's going to be, whether we really need to get a move on. I don't know if there are cards in the encounter deck that are going to just strip resources away from the investigators. I have no idea. I feel like 1 copy of Burglary would be a nice way to start a scenario off, just to have a little extra option for getting our economy going. I didn't want to. I did have 2 originally, and I took 1 out. Space was tight, and I decided that having just 1 copy of burglary was preferable to 2. We'll see how that goes. I have put 2 copies of physical training because I think this is just incredibly important for Skids as a. Where are you, Skids? You're over here. With just 2 willpower and not a lot of willpower icons in the available cards for Skids, I think just getting a physical training out is very nice for Skids, under the assumption that he also has just a buttload of resources at his disposal as well. This is the single card, essentially, that will determine how I handle willpower events and occasions. So let's just hope. I want to get one of these out really early, and then I can feel a little bit more confident that Skids is able to handle the odd willpower event. Just a single flashlight. Wasn't sure. Again, I'm not sure what the locations are going to be like, so maybe 2 flashlights in Curse of the Rougarou is an absolute must. We're going to find out. For weapons, we have just the 2 machetes and the 2 automatics. I might have gone a little bit low on weapon cards there, because I am kind of gearing Skids more towards combat focus rather than evasion focus. But I'm just hoping that we can ideally get both of these out, a 45 and a machete. A couple of police badges. This is the other willpower card that I have bumped in there. He gets just a flat +1 to his willpower, takes his paltry 2 up to a reasonable average 3. The extra 2 actions that we can get as a dispose is very nice, and will hopefully come in very useful if we can get into our police badge. For events, we have standard emergency cash, a couple of evidences. Again, I'm hoping that Skids can be quite combat focused during the playthrough. Just a single dodge. I had to remove one of these. I did have 2 in there initially. I opted to take an extra copy of physical training over a copy of dodge. And then one that I'm questioning its worthwhileness. A single copy of extra ammunition, which only synergizes with the pistols. But who knows? Hopefully we can draw into this at the optimal time, just as our ammo is running out for our weapons. We have some standard rogue events. Some of these big ones, Sure Gambles, takes a negative modifier on the Chaos token, changes it to a positive. Pretty much functionally, it seems that it's a card that takes a failed test and turns it into a successful test. Not bad for 2 resources when it's super critical. And then just a couple of sneak attacks and backstabs, just to give Skids that extra reliability for his dealing damage-ness. And then 2 of the big old hot streaks. Gain 10 resources. You have to pay 3, so you need that small amount to invest, but then you can get a big buttload back. As an action in the game, you can obviously just take 1 resource. So assuming you have 3 in hand, this kind of replaces the 1 resource you would get for a single click and gets you an extra 6 resources. So it's like a 6 resource improvement over your standard gain a resource click action. And then 2 dynamite blasts. With all the resources that I'm hoping Skids will be drowning in, we can be tossing sticks of dynamite with wild abandon, in my optimistic kind of looking forward, hoping how things will go. I don't have much in the way of just dedicated skill cards, just a couple of unexpected courages for versatility and a couple of vicious blows, hoping that this would allow us to deal with a monster, an enemy, in a single action rather than 2 actions, or some extra spike damage for when I assume we're going to end up fighting a werewolf at some point. So that's Skids. I don't know if I'm missing any crucial cards there. It feels sort of balanced, and it feels like it has a direction, which is all I'm really going for. For Agnes, a couple of copies of Forbidden Knowledge. This is one of my favourite cards in the game. I think it's wonderful. Really fun to play with, really fun for Agnes to mess around with those player windows in the timing chart. She can do some cool stuff just in the Mythos phase, in the upkeep phase. 1 copy of Arcane Initiate. Is 1 copy crazy? It might be a little bit controversial. I feel like one is, I don't know, because it's a bit of a, it's not like the Research Librarian where you can just grab a book that you want. You do just have to draw the top 3 cards and see if any of them have the spell trait. And that can include Agnes's weakness. Dark Memory is a spell card. If you play Arcane Initiate and find her weakness in the top 3, and it's the only spell there, you're going to have to draw it. And it has that forced effect of placing Doom. I don't know, just the one. Because I have put another ally in here and I didn't want too many allies competing. I don't know if I'm just trying to make excuses now, but that's the reasoning, at least, behind just the single Arcane Initiate. Double scrying for obvious reasons. I think scrying, with my unfamiliarity with Curse of the Rougarou in its entirety, I don't know what to expect from the encounter deck, so I think any scryings that we manage to get out, I will be dedicating solely at digging into the encounter deck just to see what kind of things we can expect, and then shuffling them around so that we can put willpower-based tests on the Agnes side, you know, that kind of thing. Holy Rosaries, just a very, very nice card for the accessory slot for Agnes. If she is pulling into her cards that deal horror to her and she doesn't need to ping that horror for damage, the Holy Rosary can soak some of it up, and we get the all-important +1 willpower that fuels so many of Agnes's abilities. We have a single grotesque statue, just to turn Agnes into a little bit of a sort of mini Wendy, gives her that extra reliability when she's making those critical checks. Uses up a hand slot. 2 shrivelings, don't need to go into why, and 2 copies of Book of Shadows, which are the other hand slots. No flashlights for Agnes. She just has, for hand slots, just 2 Book of Shadows and a single grotesque statue. Book of Shadows, I think the additional arcane slot will come into its own when more spell type assets enter the card pool that we don't actually have at the moment. But it's nice to have, I think, we can get 2 copies of Scrying out, for example. 2 copies of Shriveling, that kind of thing. And obviously adding a charge to a spell asset is great. And then we've got Akina. I'm not a fan of Akina when it comes to Wendy. I don't think Akina necessarily fits Wendy's playstyle. Wendy's more, for the most part, I think if she encounters a group of enemies, Wendy is just going to duck out of there and go somewhere else. For Agnes, I think fits with Akina, theme-wise at least, and she's quite expensive, but having the enemies fight each other based on Agnes's kind of influence feels very thematic for Agnes. I think Akina's a nice card for Agnes, or at least a fun one to play. For events for Agnes, we have a single Drawn to the Flame. Our Agnes is going to be a little bit reckless. She's going to peek at the mythos, but I don't think she's going to bank on using Drawn to the Flame type effects. I don't even know if I had 2 of these in the deck. I don't know if I'd play it twice. But sure, for some absolutely vital clues, we can peek behind the curtains and see what horribleness is in the encounter deck. A couple of emergency caches. For these cards, initially I had 2 of the upgraded Luckies, and then 1 regular Blinding Light and 1 upgraded Blinding Light. It's the last thing I did when I was fiddling with these decks. I swapped that, so we have a single standard Lucky and the 1 copy of the upgraded Lucky. Mainly because I think Blinding Light is a fantastic card, the upgraded version. It just comes with a bunch of improvements. It costs 1 less, it does more damage, and at a pinch, it also activates Agnes's special ability. Just turns it becomes a nice card into just a very, very great versatile card, hopefully. And Lucky's replacement effect on the upgraded is fantastic, but I think we get more mileage for Agnes out of Blinding Light's upgraded version. That's how I kind of thought my way through those. I've never actually played Mind Wipe in a game. It's been in my decks, but I've never had an opportunity to play it, so I don't know how good a card it is. It seems on the surface that it's going to be a really, really, really powerful spell if the enemies that we meet are horrible by and large due to what's written in their text box rather than the flat numbers that will be at the top. Because I don't know what to expect from the encounter deck, I have no idea if this is a great card to have or a useless card to have. We'll have it in hand and play it if we need to. And then a couple of ward of protections, just a nice control option if we draw into an encounter card that we just cannot handle, or which will completely ruin all of our best laid plans. We have hopefully a ward of protection on hand that we can play and reverse those effects. And then a couple of look what I found, just to give Agnes an opportunity to get clues where she otherwise might find it difficult to do so. For Agnes's skill cards, a couple of guts just to fuel the willpower tests that she'll no doubt be taking a ton of, and fearless to hopefully heal back some of the pings of horror that she doesn't want to take. And that's pretty much it. Let us group all these together. That is Skids' deck. This is Agnes's deck. You'll note Skids is 31 because he has Lita in there. So we have to add some basic weaknesses here. Let's add the unique cards also. Right, so outside of, there's one weakness here that I don't want to see for Skids, and that is paranoia, I think, the one that causes him to discard all his resources. That would be horrible for Skids. Everything else, whatevs, we'll just deal with as they pop up. So, that is going to be Agnes's, that is going to be Skids, that is going to be Agnes's, and that is going to be Skids's. Let's see what we draw into. Agnes first. So she has a Psychosis, which is the take horror, apply 1 direct damage. She is going to be taking a lot of horror, so this isn't great. We would probably look to double click to get rid of this, I would think. And hypochondria. So she has both types of those. Interesting. I mean, these are, I've said previously that I quite like these because they are, you can control them a little bit. You can get rid of them when you want, and they don't immediately mess up plans in the way that, say, discarding your entire hand bar 1 or losing all your resources can do. They're not nice to have, though. They certainly slow you down, and they can combo horribly with the Mythos phase immediately after upkeep. So, what I would have liked to have seen there maybe is Paranoias, just to lessen the chance that either of these is Paranoia. Okay, we have the Mob Enforcer, which is spend 4 resources. That's actually not bad at all for Skids. Hopefully, he will be, he'll have no problem having resources. Skids wants to keep his resources for obvious reasons, so if we are in a position where we can just beat this one up through more traditional means, remove it that way, then sure. But yeah, we can maybe pay resources to get rid of it. Okay, and Haunted. Add Haunted to your threat area, get -1 to each of your skills. That is a tricky one. I know there was one game where I had this, and I just, wow, it was so hard to keep track of for my silly brain. So when that comes out, I will have to make sure that I am on the ball, on top of him being a 1-2-2-3 rather than a 2-3-3-4. Let's give these a big old shuffle. I have been wondering about what I can expect difficulty-wise from Curse of the Rougarou. As I mentioned, I don't know anything about what's in here. I don't know I've not even read these agenda and acts yet. We'll get to that at the start of the next video. But I have taken a look at the new Chaos bag. Take a look at this down here. So this is very different to what we're used to from Night of the Zealot. That was a 16 token bag with 17 tokens in the final chapter. There are 24 at the standard difficulty for Curse of the Rougarou. So each token in the Gathering and Midnight Masks, etc., was quite a large jump in percentage in terms of where you're going to land on the modifiers. Adding another 8 tokens to that 16 token bag just means that every individual token is going to be a much smaller increase in probability. It spreads everything out, and the most striking thing is that, for example, for the majority of the Night of the Zealot, if you can hit -2 or better, 2 above the difficulty, you were looking at 75 to 80% success there. It was a really nice place to target. Get -2 and you've got a good fighting chance of being successful. Obviously things were complicated with regards to things like the skull tokens, what the situation was, if you had ghouls, if you had other types of enemy in there, if there was Doom on cultists in the Midnight Mask, that kind of thing. Hitting -2 in this Chaos Bag, that gets you to... it's like 55% or something. It's much, much worse than we're used to from Night of the Zealot. If you want to be getting up to that 70-80% success rate, you have to be targeting -3, -4. Just because everything is stacked so much higher toward the heavier negative numbers. Let's take a look at what we actually have here. For the symbols, skulls are -2, but if you're at any of the Bayou locations, of which I'm sure there are plenty, it's a -4. Horrible. And there are 2 of them in the bag. For cultists, that's also a -2. If the Rougarou is in your location, we're going to reveal another token and apply those negatives to the -2 that we already have. So that's going to be, chances are, much worse than -2, if the Rougarou is where we are. He has 2 cultist tokens. We have 1 broken seal and 1 elder thing. The broken seal is interesting. We're going to just reveal another token, but then there is an additional consequence of failing. If we were to then fail from the newly revealed token, movement leaves as an option. We can no longer leave. That investigator can no longer leave. And then the elder thing token is just a big old -4. And if the Rougarou is at our location, we suffer an attack. So there's a theme here of if the Rougarou is at our location, which is interesting. Immediately makes me think of the advantage of, say, tossing dynamite from an adjacent location. But we'll bear that in mind. So yeah, in terms of, I think the most difficult thing at the moment that I'm expecting is just, rather than focusing on hitting -2s, I'm going to have to be focusing on hitting -3 or -4, which... because if you're investing cards, if you're committing cards from your hand, if you're paying resources from a talent card, you want it to pass. You don't want to gamble those cards away and then lose them. I have been spoiled by Wendy's reliability, by the relative gentleness of the Night of the Zealot Chaos Bag. And I think this Chaos Bag and these investigators, I think it's going to come as something of a shock to how I have been kind of playing so far. But that'll be fun to adjust and react accordingly. Let's set up our game, shall we? Setup is quite easy. There's a few cards that you put aside up here, which I've already done. There are 2 encounter decks. There's a Bayou encounters deck and a Curse of the Rougarou encounter deck. You put this one to the side. I'm sure this will come in as one of these advances, the agenda or act. Something happens in the narrative and we close in on our prey, perhaps. In terms of setting up the Curse of the Rougarou, there are 4 different sets of location cards based on the traits here. This is the New Orleans set, the Riverside set, the Wilderness set, and the Unhallowed set, and they all have 3 cards in there. I'm going to take a d4, and we have to discard one of these from our game. So let's decide what we're going to get rid of. We get rid of the second one. We do not have the Riverside set in this playthrough. Let's just throw it over there. We now have to decide one of these to begin our game. I'm going to take a d6 and we're going to have 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and this will be our starting location. Oops. We have 6. So we're going to start in the Unhallowed. That sounds promising. And then, oops, we're going to grab these, put them to one side, and they will come into play later, I assume. We would then obviously keep them on the unrevealed side with the lock. And one of these should have Bayou on it. Yeah, this one here. Now, are these all connected? These are green double diagonal lines, and this is connected to green double diagonal lines. This is the maroon burgundy hourglass. Yeah, so everything is connected to everything else during the start, but we don't know what's on the reverse here. Let's take a look at this flavor text. No, we'll do flavor text at the start of the next game, the next video, rather. Is there anything else I want to mention? During the break, I will scribble down here the 2 weaknesses that we've added, so that we can keep track of it. No, not much else that I need to mention. I think we're good right now. Ooh, hello. Yeah, let's call it a video there. Oh. Should we draw our cards now as a closing section of the video? Yeah, then we can jump into the gameplay that much faster during the next video. Yeah, let's draw some cards. What am I hoping for with Agnes? Scrying, because I do want to get a handle on some of the encounter cards, so scrying would be nice to get out. We have, in terms of allies, we have the Arcane Initiate and Akina. I would like Arcane Initiate first, and then Akina. Maybe an early Arcane Initiate, jump into scrying or scavenging, not scavenging, shriveling. I don't know, actually. My experience with Agnes is a little bit limited. Should we do them all? No, let's do them one by one. Ward of Protection, that could be one to keep hold of. Forbidden Knowledge, definitely going to keep that. Blinding Light. We don't want you. Fearless. And Book of Shadows. I think we get rid of Book of Shadows. It's going to be more important to get the spell assets out rather than have Book of Shadows out. We'll get rid of Fearless. That's for later on when we need to heal Horror. Do we keep Blinding Light? I think not. I think we get rid of Blinding Light. Maybe not. Maybe we keep Blinding Light. These might be nice. Yeah, okay, we'll keep these. Yeah, sure. We'll keep those. Blinding Light, because I don't know how many monsters are going to be in this first encounter set. It could be that there are just 2 monsters in here, and then this one that we're going to be jumping in later is like 90% monsters. I have no idea. But under the assumption that Agnes draws into an early monster, let's just keep Blinding Light on hand. I'm sure we're going to use it. We have Shriveling, very nice. We have our Shriveling set up, and we don't want Hypochondria. A Fearless. Yeah, can't really argue with that. We've got some key cards there. Forbidden Knowledge is a nice one to just get out immediately, gives us a lot of versatility, and we have Shriveling already available to us. Not going to grumble there. Throw you on and give it a big old shuffle. Skids. I did have what I wanted for Skids. Yes, I want physical training. I want a copy of physical training for Skids and a weapon. And that is pretty much it. Let's hope we draw into those, shall we? There's physical training. Wonderful. Okay. We want weapons. We could treat this as a stand-in weapon early on until we draw into something a bit more permanent. It does a bunch of damage, so we can hopefully deal with a monster in one hit. I don't think we keep Sneak Attack and Backstab. The alternative, this is where I'm... Oh, we should keep one of these. I think we keep that in case we don't draw into a weapon. What I wouldn't want to do, I was about to do this and draw 3 more cards that way. I would hate to draw 3 cards and not have any weapons. I think we keep this just as our backup. We have physical training ready. Backstab's a little bit expensive if we're going to be getting physical training out also. But physical training is only there to handle willpower tests for the most part, I think. Yeah, let's just do... Yeah, let's do this. Ooh, Dynamite Blast. I don't want to see you yet. I was hoping for you later on. And our second Backstab. Well, I mean, we are set up for physical training and dealing combat quite strongly. So I guess in terms of what I was hoping for, this does fit the bill. Yeah, I guess I'm okay with that. So, our opening hands, our opening decks, and we are ready. When we come back, I will read the flavor text over here that sets up the scenario, and we will jump to, I believe you start at the Bayou location. So let's move our investigators over, and then we can take a closer look at this at the start of video number 2. thank you very much for watching, everybody. I trust I will see you in the next video, and we can get our werewolf hunting on. See if we can find this Rougarou, I guess would be the name that would. That was a bad joke. I don't think I'll ever make that joke again. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.